everyone and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Katarina. I am so excited to film today's video. This is one of my favorite videos both to watch from other people and to film myself. So it is going to be my makeup inventory for January of 2025. Now before getting into the video, this eye is really watery, so if the makeup is escaping on the corner of my eye, I know. It was a beautiful, bright and sunny day today, and we were outside before filming the video, and a really bright sunny weather typically makes my eyes watery, so I guess that's the reason. But yeah, anyways, let's just move on. Today I'm going to share with you my makeup inventory. I am really excited. I will say these tend to be pretty long videos because I usually talk about how my collection has changed since the last inventory, and then also about my goal. I was a little bit on a hence if I want to talk about my goals in this video or not, but I think I want to do it, but I will try to keep it pretty quick. Maybe I will later, somewhere in spring or later winter, film a video about like my ideal dream makeup collection. I feel I do have kind of like two versions of that. So the wannabe minimalist, really utilitarian and only favorite type of collection. Then there is maybe the little bit more realistic version of small and curated makeup collection, which I feel I have right now. So it's not really minimal. I just think that's maybe a little bit more realistic for me right now, because sometimes I like to buy new makeup. It is what it is. But in my ideal like fantasy me world, I would be like a true minimalist. The last time I filmed a makeup inventory was in July of last year, so it has been about 6 months, and I will show you some comparisons how my collection has changed. So I will move a little bit aside so that I can put the pictures here. In July I had 3 primers in my collection. Now I do have only one, and it is a different one. So I was actually able to use up all of those 3 primers that I had in July. Primer is something where I have maybe changed my preference recently. I used to be a lot into silicone-based primers, and now I really don't think they are that great under makeup. I just feel my makeup doesn't stay on place if I have a silicone-based primer under it. So I have wanted to buy a gripping primer instead. And I got to say, my makeup wears so much better when I use a gripping primer versus when I wear a pore filling like silicone based primer. Something that I have been thinking about is if I should have a hydrating primer in my collection or not. Do I really need the hydrating primer? Probably not, but I do feel it's something that I would get enough use out of to be able to justify it, and it would be a useful product. So yes, my goal is to, and maybe I want to try a hydrating primer from W7. It is a brand that I have recently tried some products from. They are sold at normal and they're really cheap. Like this primer is like €5 or something like that. And I have so far liked all of the products that I have tried from them. I had 2 foundations in July and now I have 2, but they are different too. The Catrice foundation that I had in July I was able to use up. The Essence Tinted Moisturizer, which I just counted as a foundation, I ended up decluttering because that one really did not work for my skin. It just looked so horrible, like it would kind of like separate from my skin and it just looked disgusting. So now I do have a Catrice foundation that is actually the only foundation I'm using currently, because the W7 foundation doesn't match me. It was the lightest shade that they sold at normal, and unfortunately it's too dark for me, so that I will be able to use up in summer. I think with foundation my goal would be 2. I would like to have a more natural foundation that is kind of like light to medium coverage and natural finish, not overly dewy but more on that dewy side. And then I would like to have a medium buildable coverage foundation that is either satin finish or kind of like demi matte, not overly matte and not overly full coverage. I really don't think my skin needs that, but still a little bit more. But I will say foundation is also one of those products where the same shade won't match me the entire year, and sometimes it happens that, for example, in spring I get tan all of a sudden and then I'm left with a foundation that is way too light. So I'm not using it in summer, but then I am able to use it up in fall. Now, however, I do try to use up my summer foundations, either if I'm not able to use them otherwise before the summer completely ends and my tan has worn off, I like to mix it with a lighter foundation. But I am tanned for a pretty short period of a year, so I don't necessarily want to have a too dark foundation laying in my drawers for almost a year before I'm able to use it again, especially since foundations are products that expire pretty quickly. But let's move on to concealer. I had 2 in July, so a regular concealer and an under eye corrector. Currently I do have 3, but my goal would be to have 2. But the reason that I do have 2 actual concealers is that none of them match me right now. So I ordered the Revolution concealer online and it's way too light for me. So I purposely bought the Catrice concealer in a little bit darker shade. That shade probably would be a great match for me in summer, and I think I maybe have had it in the past as my summer concealer, but I am able to mix a proper shade from those concealers, but ideally I would only like to have 1. I got to say, in general, I do prefer to buy drugstore makeup these days, because often I just don't see that much of a difference between drugstore makeup and high-end makeup. But I will say that ABH concealer I do really much love, and it comes in a larger packaging compared to a lot of other concealers. I think it has like 12 grams, 13 grams, something like that, at least 10 grams, so it is larger compared to the Catrice concealer, for example. And also the ABH concealer is great otherwise, because while it has good coverage, it's still more on the natural side and not super dry and cakey. So that I actually might buy in future, especially since it's not super expensive in some online stores. Okay, so far the numbers have not been too bad, but now we're getting into the territory where, you know, I would like to downsize a little bit from where I am currently. So powder. I had 2 powders in July and now I do have 5. Well, one product that I have included into my powder category is like a plotting paper thing that I got from my sister. So I decided to count that product with my powders, because I would do the same thing with that than with a pressed powder. So I would use it for touch-ups. Yeah, the Huda Beauty powder, the pressed one, is by the way the same that I did have in July. The loose powders are all new in my collection, and if you watched my Project Pan intro, you can maybe guess that I was able to finish my Catrice loose powder that I had. So now I'm left with 3 loose powders. My goal for powders would be to have 3. So I would like to have a matte loose setting powder, something that I can use for setting my under eyes, for baking, and also if I want to go for a matte skin, set my whole face with it. And I will say the Vipo loose setting powder that I am using right now is like probably the best matte loose setting powder that I have ever had. It's so good. I absolutely love it. I will say though, if you do have deeper skin tone, I don't necessarily think it would be translucent, because it has a slight yellow tint to it, but for my skin tone it works really well. I absolutely do love it, but it is also pretty heavily fragrant, so just be warned. But yeah, I would like to have a loose matte setting powder, then a glowy setting powder. Currently I do have the Vivo Diamond Skin and the Astra Makeup, I think it's Velvet Skin powder. So I do have the Vivo powder in my Project Pan, and I would then like to be left with only one glowy setting powder. And then I would like to also have a pressed powder, and that is something that I only use for touch-ups. So this category is not quite where I want it to be, but I'm sure I'm able to tackle through all of this product. Okay, then setting sprays, I had 1 in July. Now I do have 3. Something that I talked about in my wishlist video a couple of months ago was that I would like to try some glowy setting products, both setting powders and setting sprays. And I think I would prefer to have, when it comes to powders, an option to go for matte and an option to have for glowy. And then I would like to only have one setting spray that doesn't really change the finish that much, but really just locks everything on place. The iconic London setting spray that I actually have is really glowy, so that when you spray it to your face there's actual shimmer there, so I just don't think I necessarily need that. I'm currently working on the Catrice multi-talent fixing spray, the one in a lilac bottle that is in my project pan, and once that is used up, probably by the first update, I will start working on the iconic London one, and then in future I only want to have one. And here still a comparison how my complexion product category has changed in total. I do have now a little bit more products. I am not mad about what I have otherwise, but I do think I have more powders and setting sprays what I would like to have. In general, this is an area that I would like to keep really curated. I'm not somebody who is typically excited to try a new foundation launch or whatever. I just want to have a foundation that works for me. The reason I have recently tried some new complexion products is because I have wanted to change my routine a little bit. I have noticed that some old things like the silicone based primer just doesn't work as well for me anymore, so I wanted to try a creeping primer instead. Then I wanted to try those glowy setting powders to get a glowy finish, but still so that my foundation and everything is set properly, because I'm somebody who hates a sticky skin. I do want to set it with a powder and with a setting spray, but I would like to have the option to set it so that it looks glowy. I mean, it's not out of control, just those couple of categories are not something that I am 100% happy with. Let's move on to cheek products. In July I had 3, and now I do have also 3, but they have changed a little bit. I did have that Catrice cream bronzer, and I decided to declutter it in the end of the year because it had just gone really dry. And then I did have in July that Essence liquid highlighter that I was able to use up. I think a liquid highlighter for me is a pretty useless product. I don't feel it really serves a purpose, because on those days when I use cream products, I do use a more natural foundation that has glow to it anyways. And I will say the only time of the year that I really enjoy using cream cheek products is summer. Last summer I used them on my daily basis, and I preferred to go for a really lightweight skin makeup, so I would use just a natural foundation, some concealer, tease cream or liquid cheek products, and set it really lightly. While now in winter I would not want to go for a skin or a complexion like that, because it would not feel set enough, especially if I'm wearing a jacket or a coat that comes close to my face, and if I'm wearing a scarf. But in summer, when it is really hot weather, I feel the less makeup I have, and especially the less powders I have, the better. I do still a little bit of powder, but way less than the other seasons. I hope that makes sense. So because cream and liquid cheeks products are not something that I gravitate towards, except in summer during hot days, I feel I want to have a really curated selection of those, and I actually want to have only 3, and that is what I have right now. So I want to have a bronzing product, and then I like to have 2 options for blush. So a more pink shade and then a more peachy shade. So that is what I have right now, and I'm really happy with this category. Then we are getting into powder cheek products, and I will say here my collection has changed quite a bit. And let's talk about cheek palettes next, because here are also products for other categories, like I do have bronzers in cheek palettes and all of that. So in July I had 1 cheek palette, and now I do have 2. So the Charlotte Tilbury cheek palette is the same, although hopefully you can see that the palette looks way more loved compared to July. A new addition to my collection in this category is the blush and highlighter duo from Iconic London that I bought on Black Friday. So it has like a pinky rosy blush and then kind of like a pinky peachy highlighter. Face palettes is a category that I don't think I really need to have in my collection, but I think 2 is my maximum. So now I do not want to buy a new cheek palette before I'm able to get the Charlotte Tilbury one out, and that actually is my Pandat face palette for 2025. In July I had only one bronzer and I do have currently only one. In September, I think it was, I decided to declutter a lot of my really old and expired makeup because some of those old eyeshadows were causing me a reaction, and back then I really just decided that it's not worth for me to keep makeup that is just years and years, like let's say 5+ years old. But yeah, that Too Faced bronzer that I had was a really old one. It was from the last decade, so I decided to declutter that. And the bronzer that I do have right now is the Catrice, I think it's called Sun Lover Glow bronzing powder. It's a beautiful glowy bronzer. Actually it reminds me a lot of the Too Faced bronzer that I had. My goal would be to have 2 bronzers in my collection. So I would like to have a matte bronzer that I can contour with and then a shimmery bronzer. However, although I currently do have only one like a single bronzer in a compact, I do still have matte bronzers in my Charlotte Tilbury Nudegasm palette. And today I'm actually wearing those bronzers, and the darker shade from that palette is what I do use for contouring. So before that palette is out, there is no need for me to buy a new matte bronzer. Okay, so blush. This category has changed probably the most from my collection because it has changed completely. The only blush in my collection that is the same compared to July is that blush in the Charlotte Tilbury palette, and then one of the cream blushes, but we're not counting those right now. But all of my single blushes have actually changed. So I did have 3 in July. The Benegos one was actually a bronzer and blush duo that I had gotten from a beauty subscription box like in 2020. I forced myself to hit pan on that bronzer by using it actually as a bronzer, but I really hated how it looked on my skin and I was just kind of over of the product. The 2 depotted blushes were from Essence and I just didn't really love them anymore, and also I don't want to have like magnetic blush pans. Like I want my blushes to be either in a face palette or 10 in a single compact, and anyways I didn't really love the colors anymore, so I decided to declutter those 2, and also the bronzy one shattered. Anyways, the blushes that I do have right now are 2 W7 blushes. They are really light and neutral blushes, and then I do have 2 blushes from a brand Mesauda Milano. Those blushes I bought when we traveled to Tallinn last fall. Today I am wearing the Mesauda blush that is the lower on the picture. For blush I have set my maximum to be 5. Do I need 5 blushes? Probably not, but yeah, I think that is like the number that I don't want to go over, and I'm specifically talking about like blushes in compact. One blush that is on my wish list kinda, but I try to resist it for now, although it would cost 4 euros, but still I don't need it right now. It is from W7. I'm really impressed with their blushes. I really do love them. So the box blush in the shade Strawberry Street. That is a beautiful light kind of like pinky peach color that is a little bit more vibrant but still not overly bright. I just think it looks the perfect kind of like spring and summertime blush for me. But I don't necessarily need it because I feel it's not then so far from the other blushes that I do have. But yeah, this is what I have right now, and if I count all of the blush pans in my collection, I do have currently 6. Maybe that is why I have not bought the strawberry blush yet, because 6 blushes, it is more what I had in the past, like in my last inventory for example. But I feel I have recently been a little bit more into blush. Alright, let's talk about highlighters. I had 2 in July and now I do have 3. the Becca Champagne Pop highlighter is still the same, or this is not like the original Becca Champagne Pop from like 2016, I think is when I originally bought it. This is a new that I bought maybe a year or two ago. So it is one of those Becca products that Smashbox decided to sell on their selection. That one for me is more like a summertime highlighter. It really is too dark for me if I don't have any tan. The Essence highlighter that I had in July, I decided to declutter because it was one of those really old last decade products and I just wasn't comfortable using it anymore. Especially since highlighter is a product that I sometimes also like to use on my eyes, either on my inner corner or then like as lid shade. However, I did replace that Essence highlighter with a similar one. The name has just changed, at least here in Europe. They're not selling that Pure Nude anymore, but they're selling this Make Me Glow highlighter these days, but it is basically the same thing. So that is like my natural everyday highlighter. And then the iconic London highlighter that I have is new. That is actually what I'm wearing today. It is the Lit and Luminous highlighter and it is so beautiful. That one for me is like my perfect winter time highlighter. It is light and bright and kind of like neutral in tone. So if we look at my entire cheek product collection, it has changed quite a bit. Some of those really old products or products that I didn't really enjoy otherwise have left, and some new products have entered my collection and my collection has grown a little bit. However, I still don't think this is out of control by any means. I really think I want to get that strawberry blush from W7. That is kind of like on my wish list, but if I get that, maybe then I'm not going to buy anything else in this category. That blush really reminds me of what Milano Luminoso used to be before they reformulated it, when it still had a little bit more of that pink peach tone to it compared to that orange peach, which it seems to be right now. I saw a video on TikTok where somebody compared the old one to the new one and it is clearly more orange now, and I really miss the pinkier one, so yeah, maybe I will buy the W7 strawberry blush. Okay, let's move on to eyes and first talk about the boring eye products. I really hate to talk about this. This is always my least favorite part in a makeup inventory, so let's just go through this quickly. Brow products is something to be proud of. I did have one in July, but now I do have zero. That Catrice Brow Powder Duo, it shattered so that it was all powder mess, and I do store my makeup for the most part in a makeup bag like this. So I couldn't do with that shattered brow powder that could spread all over my makeup bag, so I ended up decluttering that. Anyways, I don't think a brow powder duo is what I need because I do have brow eyeshadow in my collection that I can use for my brows. I have sometimes been thinking, however, if I should add one of those skinny brow pencils into my collection, but I try not to because I go through those so quickly. I would need to constantly repurchase, and then I'm cheap and I wouldn't want to buy something expensive, so I would need to find a good one that is affordable. Maybe I'm not going to buy it because I really can do my brows using brown eyeshadow. I had two eyeshadow primers in July and I do have currently two. The Milani primer is the same and the Catrice primer is new. I did declutter my NYX glitter primer. It was like, I think, over a couple of years old already, and I just wasn't really comfortable using it anymore because I think it has a really short shelf life, like maybe 6 months. I do think my goal would be to have two eyeshadow primers, so a regular one and then also a glitter primer. Eyeliners, I had two in July and I do have currently two. The Too Faced eyeliner is still the same, so that is my waterline pencil. I only use nude pencil on my waterline. And although I use it every single day, it's a product that goes so slowly. And then the Physicians Formula eyeliner is new. And my goal is to have two eyeliners, so a nude waterline pencil and then a liquid liner. In July I had only one mascara. Now I do have two. So I do have two of those Essence Lash Without Limits mascaras. I have a brown one and I have a black one. I also had a brown one in July, but it is a different one, so I used up the one that I had and I have replaced it. My goal is to have two. I like to have the option for black and brown both, especially if I'm not going to do any eyeshadow and I'm going for a really natural makeup. On those days I do prefer to use a brown mascara because it's just going to look so much more natural and soft. However, on those days when I'm going to do eyeshadow and I want a little bit more drama to my lashes, but I don't bother wearing false lashes, I want to then have black mascara because it's just going to be a little bit more visible and dramatic, and honestly most days are like that for me. For example, on my everyday basis I like to wear black mascara, and false lashes are something that I really only do on special occasion. Talking about false lashes, now this is not really super well comparable because in July I had only one pair of Ardell Demi Wish Beads. I was really low on my multi-pack and only had that one pair. Well, I have bought a new multi-pack of lashes, but also I have a couple of packs. I do have the House of Lashes Sadie Mini, and then I do have a pair from Technique that is like a black brown. Those I'm wearing today and they are actually in my project pan. But I think I had those two. So the House of Lashes and the Technique lashes also last time that I filmed an inventory, but I had just officially decluttered them from my collection and I thought that I will try to give them away, but I wasn't able to, so then I just thought that I'm going to wear them myself. False lashes is something that I don't wear at all on everyday basis these days, although like let's say 5 years ago I never created an eyeshadow look without wearing false lashes. Now that feels a little bit ridiculous for me, but false lashes really is for me like a special occasion thing, and I think unless my makeup is really glammed up otherwise, the false lashes are just going to look tacky and not good. Yeah, I wear them pretty rarely. Typically when I film I wear them. Not every time of course, but especially now since I have decided to pare my collection down and pan false lashes, you will probably see me wearing them on camera more than during the fall time, for example. And then if it is a special occasion, so maybe date night or maybe a celebration, something like that. This I want to get down to only one pair, and I want to have one pair that is a little bit more glam. And then here's still a picture of my entire eye makeup collection other than eyeshadow in July and what the whole category is looking like right now. So I am pretty pleased otherwise, but as I said, the false lash category I do want to pare down.